it's a huge impediment, not only for to attract new manufacturing businesses to the province, but also to allow existing manufacturing, companies that really use a lot of energy, allow them the opportunity to grow, because they're hindered with these huge operating costs.
We've mentioned the corporate tax rate. You would bring it down to 8%?
8%, from 11 to 8%.
From 11 to 8%.
Correct.
The Liberal Party would keep it at the 12.5%?
Well, we would keep it where it currently is at 11.5%.
Or 11.5, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
and
confusing it with
the cost
Green
of
Party.
reducing it by a further 30% is $3 billion in
$3
revenue to the province. And I'm not, this, again, as Jobs Minister, I'm not hearing this from business that we have to go further. We believe we are the lower, combined federal, provincial, corporate tax rates are 10 percentage points lower than any U.S. state. We don't need to go lower. And the cost to the Treasury is $3 billion for doing that.
The 12.5%, in fact, is your party, Josh Rackless.
Right.
You would raise the rate to 12.5%.
Green Party would reverse the cuts by 1% and take that $800 million in revenue and give it as a tax cut to small businesses, because that's proven. That's where the jobs are, and that's where we want people working in the local community. Okay. Like when you give money to big corporations, they call it dead money. It just sort of sits there. They send it away. They sort of invest it. It's never been proven to create jobs. They're giving it to their shareholders elsewhere or whatever. It's
well,
not.
can we talk a bit about that? Because there's the great debate about who, the Million Jobs Plan. It's the battling economists. Some say it's crazy, and some say, no, it's bang on. There's that other great debate about if you offer corporate tax cuts, do you get jobs coming out the other end? And let me just go down the line here.
Wouldn't that be a wonderful world, right? You take taxes away from big businesses, they can fund your political parties with all their money, and then everybody's happy and has jobs, right? I mean, if that was possible, everybody here would be for that. That's great. Lower the taxes to zero. We've got magic jobs. But I mean, if you just look at the history of the world, right? Like, I mean, it's never happened. And this debate happens in every jurisdiction in the United States and Canada. It's like just lower corporate. And so what I'm hearing is the voice of businesses, big businesses here. Just, tell them they will lower our taxes and we'll create jobs. It just doesn't happen.
Come back to you on that, Justine, and then I'll come to you, Eric.
I can tell you that I run a small business, and we're always struggling with operating costs and always looking at taxes. And the reality is, the more money we have, the more we have to actually expand and grow and further, our investment in the community. That's just a fact. And so lowering taxes, I've never heard a business say they don't want lower taxes. I've never heard people say I've never heard an individual
like
say I don't want lower
taxes.
taxes. I mean, that's something I hear all the time. I mean, everybody wants to lower taxes because it allows you to, and as an individual, it allows you to spend however you see fit or save or whatever it is that you'd like to do. As a business, it allows you, if you so choose, to grow your business. And most businesses do want to grow.
If you so choose, but I think that's what people are arguing about, right?
But the reality is most businesses are in the business of growing, right? I mean, that's the point. And when you grow, you get to hire more people.
Okay,
That's
Eric
been my
Hoskins, what
experience.
about that notion that if lowering the tax, you get jobs?
Well, I think you need to make a responsible decision. And of course, every business would like to have lower taxes. We've lowered corporate taxes significantly in this province, as has the federal government, to the point where it's the lower than any United States state. But I think, the way I look at it is Josh, I mean, I think that perhaps we're somewhat aligned on this, that there are a number of variables, a number of things that are important to business. What I hear most, quite frankly, is their access to a skilled workforce, that one of the greatest assets we have as a province, but one of the greatest requirements for business as well, regardless of size, is that they have access to highly skilled individuals. We need to create that competitive environment. Corporate taxes is part of that. But we also need to build infrastructure around the province so that businesses can move their goods around, or if they're involved in the service industry, similarly. And quite frankly, electricity factors into that. I'm a little bit worried with some of the comments of Justine, where she said that we have the most expensive energy costs of any jurisdiction in North America. Well, 40 states have electricity costs that are higher than Ontario's. Calgary's electricity is higher than Toronto's. Edmonton's is higher as well. We're in line with New York. We're cheaper than Michigan. And that is important to business as well, and depends on the size. It's important to individuals and families too. So it's getting that
Certainly
balance.
important to manufacturing companies that we
It
would
is.
like to come back to.
So it's
isn't
getting
it?
that,
Yeah.
I think getting that balance right. What worries me about the corporate tax side of things is we've lowered them dramatically over the past number of years. We don't need to go a further 30% at the cost of $3 billion to the treasury of the province.
All right, we're now 20 minutes into our debate. Let's shift gears. Charmaine, we have some questions from people in the riding. Let's roll on one of those questions, please.
When will the government come up with more money for Ministry Community and Social Services funded programs for adults with disabilities?
All right, let's go to Josh Rackless to start with that.
Well, I mean, the Green Party is all about finding efficiencies in government and using money better, right? So, I mean, if we properly, I mean, in terms of healthcare, we're about increasing people's health. So lowering pollution, increasing walkability in communities, funding local food, funding healthy food. And the healthier people are, the less they'll get sick, and the more money we'll have to fund people with disabilities that they can't prevent and that we can put back into healthcare.
All right. Justine, how would you reply to that question?
Yeah, the question was how would we direct funds to
Yes.
help people with disabilities? So, I think one of our biggest priorities is reining in spending. I mean, we've talked about balancing the budget in the next 2 years so that we can actually and look for opportunities to save. And one of our motivating factors in that is that we want to make sure that we direct funds to people and to important projects within the province that most need the funds.
Well, would
And
people
so
with
people with
disabilities be
disabilities
one
would
of those
that.
priorities?
Thank you. I was
gonna-
trying to get there, but you helped
Okay.
me along.
All right.
Thank you. I was
Okay.
stumbling. a
Well,
bit.
I'm always conscious of
thank
the
you.
time because we
Thank you.
only have an hour.
So people with disabilities would be a priority, 100%.
That would be a priority.
And we want to make sure that we look for opportunities to make sure that the funds that people with disabilities need, that they get to those people.
Eric Hoskins on that same question.
Well, before being the Minister of Economic Development, I was the Minister of Children and Youth Services, and I have to say there was nothing more heartbreaking than meeting a parent with a child with a disability, physical or mental, and that individual struggling to get the support or the care for that child, or adults with developmental disabilities, as was referenced here. So it's been a priority of our government. In fact, in the budget that both Progressive Conservatives and the NDP party decided they would not support, we had a proposal in there to invest $800 million over the next 3 years, unprecedented amount of money, specifically to children and adults with developmental disabilities. So kids with autism, we would get rid of the wait lists for kids with autism to be able to get the support that they need. For families that are struggling because they have an adult that they're caring for who has a developmental disability, we would be able to provide the support for them. And again, emphasizing that it's not just the physical disabilities, it's also the mental ones. We developed, and I have to say it was a committee, an all-party committee a number of years ago that led to a very powerful initiative by government to address the issue of mental health among the population, focusing in the first instance on children, and we've made tremendous progress with significant investments. So it is a priority for this government and will continue to be. It's unfortunate that that $800 million was not supported by the Progressive Conservatives or the NDP.
Would the 800 million be the figure that your party would be considering in terms of supporting those with disabilities? That's the figure that was in the budget.
800 million.
Yeah.
To be completely honest, I don't have an exact number in terms of what we would financially commit to helping people, but I can tell you that it would be a priority for us. And that's why we're so invested in making sure that we have the funds available to fund important initiatives and help people who really need the help. But I don't have an exact figure, no.
Okay. Does the 800 million strike a
Well, it reminds
happy
me of the
note with
exact
you?
number
I
that
mean-
would be saved if we reversed that tax cut by 1%. So we could
That's
argue over
roughly-
whether we want to give it to the disabled or small businesses. But I mean, Green Party is all about finding efficiencies everywhere, right? So if we stop wasting money on moving gas plants or on refurbishing nuclear power stations or you know, these kind of things, or wasting money in the economy on gridlock, then we can have more money to give to the same things we value. I mean, I absolutely agree with Eric. These are the things we value. And it's just, you know, do you want more of the same? We know exactly what's going to happen if we have another Liberal government with no Green voice, right? So.
Well, you've mentioned some of the, Eric,
Well,
I'm
I was
sorry.
just going to say, you know, one of the concerns I have about the PC platform, because Tim Hudak has been very explicit that that funding for programs in social services will have to wait until the budget is balanced, right? And so you've got a platform which is going to cut program spending over the next 2 years by 6%. And we know where it's going to get cut, the 100,000 jobs that are going to be lost, which will be in health and education and social services. So the result of those actions are going to be so detrimental to precisely the sorts of persons that the individual that asked the question was referencing.
If I could comment on that, I
Please.
think we've been pretty clear that the 100,000 jobs that we're looking at, first of all, it would take place over 4 years, and we would 60% of it would be through retirement or through a hiring freeze, and the remaining 40% would be jobs that you know, some of which could be outsourced, so things like maintenance, IT. Food services, and we've been very clear that we would absolutely protect jobs related to healthcare or any frontline jobs that involve patients or anything like that.
Your
or
leader
education.
told me this morning in a fairly long discussion we had about those 100,000 jobs that the target on, say, the 40 or 50% of the jobs where pink slips might be handed out would target middle management bureaucracy as well. Is that?
That's correct.
you?
And so jobs that really, you really don't know until you actually become government and get in and see opportunities for efficiencies. But the reality is, in any business or in any government, at a certain point in time, especially when you hire, you know, our public service or our broader public service has increased by 300,000 positions, I think, since 2003 or 2009. And the reality is that's a lot of people. Surely there's an opportunity, particularly at the middle management, people who are doing administrative jobs for savings.
You hit upon something that I think a lot of voters react to, and that's, well, until we get in there and we can see what's going on, we may not know exactly what we're going to do. I think in my memory of successive governments in Ontario, every single government has said pretty well the same thing. So in other words, we can't do A, B, and C, maybe we can do D. In other words, you know, there seem to be two worlds of reality that when you get inside, suddenly there are things that cannot be done. We kind of hoped you would know beforehand where those changes, those cuts, whatever, could be made.
Right. Well, I think we've been pretty clear that they would be administrative type positions, bureaucratic positions, that they would not affect the front lines. And I think that gives you a pretty good idea of the types of jobs that we would be looking to not renew.
You understand the concerns I'm voicing here.
I do, and with great respect, Justine, I disagree profoundly. Because Tim Hudak talks about 1.1 million people in the broader public sector, but when you strip away the federal public servants that wouldn't be part of this, and others that you can't actually access, it works out to be about 1 out of every 6 people in the broader public sector. And there simply aren't as many middle managers, and quite frankly, I think it's an insult to middle level managers to somehow suggest that they aren't important to the delivery of the services that we're talking about. But the people that are going to lose their jobs, and probably as many as 1,000 in St. Paul's alone, are the firefighters, the nurses, and the personal support workers that are so important to our seniors, our teachers. You've committed to firing this is your figure, 9,700 education workers, primarily teachers. And it's a question of who do you believe. So Tim Hudak was a junior health minister under Mike Harris. At that time, Mike Harris, with Tim Hudak's support as junior health minister, closed 28 hospitals, fired 6,000 nurses. And Mike Harris committed to only firing 13,000 people in his platform. Tim Hudak is actually admitting that he's going to be firing 8 times as many as Mike Harris did. And we saw the results in the 1990s when Mike Harris literally decimated our public services that we rely on.
You know, I think if we're going to talk about, you know, history, why don't we keep it to the past decade? You know, I think there's a nice track record there of what's happened over the past 10 years. And I think Tim Hudak's been very clear that the reason that we've identified specific types of jobs within the bureaucracy is because we're broke. We're running a $12.5 billion deficit a year. We need to look for opportunities for savings. We have to be realistic. You know, it's not something that we want to do. It's not something that we take pleasure in doing, but it is a reality of the time that we find ourselves in.
So for the sake of balancing the budget 365 days earlier, you will fire 100,000 people, you will cut program spending by